a little bit of what he wrote about himself. So he was building the greatest cybersecurity company empire in the U.S. with a roll-up strategy so unique it had competitors trembling. I love the drum roll here. But guess what? My own board, my own people stabbed me in the back. So there's a story here. The ones that I brought in, the ones that I trusted, and the rug pulled me. So thank you again for your honesty to begin with, because I was on a call this morning. They were saying anybody that goes after something really big has scars.
Oh yeah,
We do.
yeah.
Okay.
Couldn't agree
So,
more.
so if this is still current, you're taking over the trucking industry. Is that kind of where you're
Uh,
at now?
yes, yes, exactly. So basically, I left, or I was forced to leave my previous company, and then now January 2024, I've started a new roll up in trucking and logistics. That's correct.
Very cool. Okay. So now he's backed by the most powerful people in the industry. So as I said, there's a story here. So the name of the show, Tony, as we said, is called Under the Hood. And when we chatted with it, it's that patterns that are created in childhood impact us as grown-ups. And then we kind of go from there and have a lot of the influences sometimes that we look at and sometimes that we don't. So can you tell us a little bit about the your patterns that you grew up with, things about your family that kind of you think impact you today?
Sure, sure. Well, I come from a lower middle class family.
Hmm.
I grew up in Europe, first Italy and then Switzerland, which both exposed me to diverse cultures, I would say, and ways of thinking early on.
Hmm.
I grown up with a two parents household, so my mom and dad were together by when I was growing up, and they're still together.
Hmm.
My dad has been a truck driver for 35 plus years, very hardworking guy. My mom was a stay-at-home mom because, yeah, she could in a sense, and she enjoyed that.
Hmm.
And my my life has not been about privilege. I wish I had, the privilege that most people have to go and actually study, do an MBA, learn everything the conventional way about, finances or, business in general. But
Hmm.
that wasn't it, right? Um, so that exposed me since a very young age to a lot of, situation. And what I, learned is that life doesn't owe you anything,
Hmm.
and success in any realm is rather taken than given. So I learned from very early on that if I wanted something, I needed to go out and grab it myself. Um,
Hmm.
and that kind of mindset has been the foundation of everything that I've built until now. And talking about family and patterns of behavior that I developed early on, or that that were enforced in me since a small child, was through my father. My father had a truly a significant influence about my behavior. He was a very strict disciplinarian, and from him I learned two critical lessons.
Hmm.
Uh, One, which is the biggest one, is absolute accountability for everything that happens in your life, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the situation. And I carry that absolute accountability mentality even today, right?
Yeah.
And you know, regardless of the interest rate, the Fed is going to implode, explode. I still think that if this thing fails, it's my fault, regardless of the circumstances. So that's
So sometimes that could be the good news, bad news, right? Sometimes, I mean, I think it's we say in psychology we do create our own reality, right? That's kind of what you're talking about. We create our own reality, and
exactly.
sometimes there are external influences that we cannot control, right? So therefore, then we have to control our internal selves,
Yeah,
right? So,
absolutely.
right.
And I think that exposes you to by thinking the way you just described, I think that exposes you to and puts you in a place where in a sense, you feel comfortable because you know intrinsically that whatever happens is your fault, and if it's your fault, you can have control over it. Despite the fact, as you said, that sometimes you cannot have control over external circumstances, maybe it's just eluding yourself.
Well, I like to put it this way and see if this fits for you, right? We all want to be in control of our lives in some way, shape, form, or
Pretty
another.
much.
Pretty much. Not everybody, some people give it up, but for the most part, most people want to control, feel like they have control over their lives. Where people get into trouble is they look at external events. Oh, that didn't happen and that didn't happen because of the feds or because of this or because of that, right? But when you put the accountability on yourself, right, it really puts us at choice. And that's what I really think is really being in control of your life. I choose to accept accountability. I choose to see where I went wrong. I choose to see that I was blindsided by that. So therefore, that personal sense of control, when they talk about the word empowerment, which is a little bit overused, that's kind of the way I think about it. How does that fit for you?
Well, that resonates. That resonates pretty well, but there is a thin line, I think, between being super accountable and being a control freak. I don't know.
Yes.
If
Well,
that
being
makes
a
sense.
control freak is controlling others,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, I think
right?
that makes total sense.
Well, we could get really picky on this because then we can get into perfectionism, and that's another whole issue. You know?
Okay. Well, talking about perfectionism, Tina, uh, one of the other things that I learned early on, and this was truly hammered into my head since a young little boy, is that if you're going to do something, do it perfectly
Mhm.
or don't bother.
Mm,
And this, I, I don't know if that makes sense, but at least to me, when I
yeah.
self-analyze a bit whatever happened in my life and where I'm at, was a double-edged sword
Mhm.
because it doesn't allow you to execute like you have no limits to your ability. And I think
Mhm.
acting, with, acting like you don't have any limits. It's crucial to success. But if you get hammered into your head since a very young age that you need to be this perfectionist, right?
Right.
Either you do it perfectly or you don't bother, don't do it, don't start anywhere because you will not be able to do it
Right.
perfectly. It's it's
Well,
like jumping from a banana.
it's the black and white of it, right? That is limiting,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Right. And
It's
what we do know too, and I think again, I think you can relate to this, Tony, is that failures, the way that I kind of think about it, is only a failure if you don't learn something from it.
Well, that's very profound. I truly believe that everything that happens, good or bad, you should always learn a lesson out of it, especially out of the bad stuff. And
Hmm.
I can talk a bit about bad stuff, bad choices, bad experiences, and some of them were just, okay, it happened. What's the lesson? Some of them were oh shit, I lost $10 million worth of equity. What I'm gonna do
Hmm.
now? Okay, because
Hmm.
of my own choices. So I totally agree, but how you make that shift, right? How
Yes.
how you interpret what happens to you as a lesson. I think that's where most people struggle.
Yes. Yes. And I have lots to say about that. But since this is your interview, we can talk because you're talking very much in the struggles that people have. And that's kind of the purpose of us having this conversation. of getting into the black and white of it, the right or wrong of it, the judging of ourselves, which when we do that, we leave no room for humanity and for actually reality and truth.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
nobody has all the answers, nobody is perfect, and we learn by the consequences of our own behavior, right? So either we learn from them and we make those adjustments, so we can talk a little bit about some of the adjustments that you actually made, or we don't. And then we keep going around and around and around in that same, that same cycle. So
Mhm.
what were some of the adjustments that you made, that you kind of came to some realizations and you started to make some shifts?
What a great question. Well, let me tell you first. The discipline and perfectionism. I inherited from my dad. As I mentioned, I've been a
Mm-hmm.
double-edged sword. So one of the things that I changed is being fast rather than being perfect. I believe that
Mm-hmm.
speed is one of the most important things, one of the tools in your arsenal that you should constantly be
Mm-hmm.
using. Speed matters. Everything moves fast. Your competitors, money, your team, everything around you moves so fast. Life, time, you name it. Everything around you moves fast, and it will continue to move forward regardless of what you do. So one of
Mm-hmm.
the most powerful tool that you have is moving fast rather than uh, being perfect, having a perfect plan. Rather, okay, you have a concept, just execute on it. It's life. You push through something, you're gonna have an answer, you're gonna have a feedback, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one of the changes that I implemented early on, and I was forced to implement as soon as I started in business, which I started 5 years ago doing roll-ups and acquisitions on my own, and you know uh, this relentless pursuit, I would say, of perfectionism has lost me personally
Mm-hmm.
a lot of deals, a lot of relationships, and the ability to create opportunities when others saw problems. Because again, you always wanted this perfect deal, this perfect, you
Right.
know, this perfect opportunity. It doesn't work like that. I learned it the hard way by losing a lot of
Yes.
opportunities. And on the other hand, I learned to balance a little bit that mindset um, with something equally important, which is listening to my gut feeling, my instinct.
Good.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
with speed, coupled with speed, is one
Yes.
of, uh, if not, in my opinion, the most important skill that you should develop. How you do that? I'm not an expert. Some even expert, but probably it's the way I've been raised and put into different scenarios as a kid. Where I almost needed to have that primordial human instinct
Yes.
to
So
have
you
that
bring up,
level of awareness.
Tony, you bring up something that is absolutely positively critical, and there's a lot of different ways that we can talk about it, because that is my playing field, you know. But really, what you're describing is a mind and a body relationship. So the mind is logical, right? I should do this, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that. But the heart has another language. And what happens in our culture, in Western culture, is we're frequently talking heads. We're just all logic, analytical logic, but we don't listen. And I think what you're describing so beautifully is you had a belief system that was instilled in you as a child, and you operated on it, but it was incomplete,
Pretty much.
right? It wasn't all bad. It wasn't all, but it was incomplete. And so when you were able to, again, we can kind of look at that, how you started to pay attention to that little voice that honestly um, steers us in the right direction. Even if we don't know the answer, it still steers us. Something's not right here. Something's off, right? And if we don't pay attention to that, that's when we override it and we end up in all kinds of, interesting situations.
Completely,
So,
completely.
right?
Yeah, well,
So,
over time, I realized exactly what you said, that some of my best decision on my personal life or my business
mhm,
life came from trusting that little voice. The
that's right.
more you learn to listen and trust it, the louder it becomes with time. And, the ability to sense when something was off and when an opportunity was worth pursuing grew, as I trusted more that
That's right.
little, inner
That's it.
voice. Because your gut, your instinct, basically is your sub. And this is my belief. Again, I'm not an expert, but I believe that your gut is basically your subconscious mind connecting the dots faster than your conscious mind can.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Literally, that's exactly right. Because the unconscious mind, that part of our brain, kind of picks up flashes. Oh, a little piece of this, a little piece of that, and then it puts it together. And the quieter we are to be able to listen to that voice, the quicker it comes. It's like, oh, God, oh, yeah. Now I see it. Now I see it. Now I see where I made that mistake. It's so brilliant. So you're really touching on some really, really important things. You have learned how to do this on your own, um, which is a lot of school of hard knocks.
Oh, yes.
And the truth is that I like to say that good mental health, and we're talking about really mental health in the way of wellness health, not that there's something wrong, or how would you know? You wouldn't know. You didn't learn it. So I like to say good mental health is not a natural sport, it's a learned sport. And however we learn it, and the younger we are that we learn it, the more beneficial, right?
Yep.
And but you learned it, and that's really very, very remarkable and wonderful,
Yep.
because these are the messages that we want to give to people, that it's not all written in a book.
No, completely. I mean, you're absolutely right, and I believe that uh, because again, when you're in business, you want to get things done, fast. You want to come to that success fast, and you start to learn a lot about yourself, your true self, about your pattern of behavior. And what I analyze is that what I was missing wasn't self-esteem. I mean, as a child, I was allowed to believe a lot of stuff, but uh, you know, I was also held accountable for everything that I believed in, and I needed to, stand up for what I believed in as a child. Uh, so, self-esteem was not what I missed. What I miss is exactly what what we're talking about is listening to that kind of you know inner voice more and trusting that more and stop being a perfectionist. And this if you have and you approach business with that mentality that I had when I started, it's awful. It's
Hmm.
truly awful. It will knock you down, so many times, and you will think, what the hell? Why is the world against me? Why nothing is going forward? It's not the world, it's you, through this old, behavioral patterns that your parents have instilled in you. And, I love my parents to death. I know that, you know, they did their best or they did what they knew at the time. Now, of course,
Exactly.
you know, if they knew what they were truly doing, they will behave differently. They will instill other, skills in me since a very young age. But for them, this was the right thing to do. Not because they're a bad person, but because they thought
No,
this is a good thing to do.
absolutely. 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 So let me ask you another question.
Sure.
So I think you like high pressured kinds of things, as you say, you got to make the decisions quickly, and you have a method that you have learned how to do that. Um, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now when you're managing people, teams, yourself, conflicts? What's the biggest issue that you're facing right now?
Uh, what a great question, Tina. And I know you're not gonna like my answer because it might be very general, but one of the biggest challenge, private life, business life, it's starts and ends with people. That's where your problem starts, and that's where your problems will end. Uh, and I, I know that I'm a very empathic person by nature, in a sense. I do that automatically when I talk to somebody, and I want to get something out of that person. I always think, if I were him, would I do this, right? For example, our due diligence process when we evaluate deals is not that huge 90 days, turning every stone multiple times. Rather, it's focusing on the people, right? And we ask questions that usually investors don't ask, which is, we go to the seller and we ask, if this was your money, would you buy yourself, right? Well, nobody has ever asked me that question, or if you had this kind of money, what would you do to grow that business? Or is it possible to grow? And you learn so much. I mean, it's mind-boggling, because they're brainstorming right there in front of you without any type of barriers. They somehow trust you because you ask the right question, and everybody likes to talk about themselves in a way. So I think the biggest challenge that I'm, also facing today, it's with people, but it's not from being not enough empathetic. I think it's the other it's the other way around, because I don't believe that you can be empathetic enough to get. I cannot be empathetic enough, with you, Tina, so that I can get something out of you, but not get emotionally attached to you. I don't know
Right.
if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfectly good sense. Makes perfectly
And
good sense.
with deals, if you get emotionally involved with if you get romantic with your deal, you might end up, investing in some truly bad stuff that will come and,
Right.
explode in your face later on. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that's one of the challenge that we're constantly not just myself, even my team, which is, combined have over 300 years of experience. We're all facing the same challenge. We want to cut through the BS, if I'm allowed to say.
Yeah.
We want to learn the true nature of the business, how is it making money, and the mindset of the current owner, of the seller behind. We're not going to do that by asking standard questions. We need to be
So the
empathetic.
strategies that I'm hearing you say that you use are asking these open-ended questions where you might get the answers that you want. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, but it's not only open-ended question, is genuine interest. But
Yeah.
how do you develop genuine interest? Because I can ask open-ended questions, but would you be able to ascertain if I have genuine interest or I'm just following a script, right? That's the other
Right.
part. In order for me to get out of you exactly the thing that I want, I need to show genuine interest, and you cannot fake genuine interest. You need
Right. I was kind of using open-ended questions as sort of allowing people to answer, rather than putting it into a box, a check box. So I think we're talking about the same thing, actually. Giving people an opportunity to really express themselves so that you can listen intently. I think that's kind of what I heard you say. Right. Right. So what we're saying to everybody is people are complicated. People are very complicated, and some things are very simple, and some things are not so simple. In other words, there are certain patterns. There's only so many themes in the universe, and there's an infinite number of variations on that theme. And so each person is very, very uniquely individual, and at the same time, there are certain drives and certain things that happen to all of us, just being human. So Tony, we could have lots of really great conversations around this.
Oh, totally. That's it.
And I totally, totally value your time. And let's just end with, and you sort of alluded to this, but what was the biggest lesson you learned from your biggest failure? What you considered your biggest failure?
Oh, I believe it's uh, gut feeling. That's the biggest lesson that I always learn. The gut feeling, that primal instinct. This is one of the biggest lesson, and the other biggest lesson that I learned is that a CV doesn't mean anything. So I learned to you know trust my gut, not the CV when I hire people. Trust my gut, not what the deal is on paper, right? I don't know if that
Mm-hmm.
makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has an agenda, but
Yeah,
you know, you don't need to take this negatively. I think
that's
there
right.
is a big question that you need to ask, that you need to ask yourself when you're dealing with people. Either you're hiring people, you're doing deals, you're talking to a banker, you're talking to a lawyer that it's helping you, it's in business with you, it's in bed with you. And that question, the more you invest into that question, the more you will be able to find out. And that question is, what is it in there for him?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And that puts you in a spot where you can, analyze a lot of scenarios and possibly avoid the worst case scenario for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I hate when people try to put it in black and white, where nobody can be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but what you do about it? What is a more beautiful way to put it? And
Yes.
my beautiful
Yes.
way of putting this is that everybody has an agenda. I have an agenda. You have an agenda. My board has an agenda, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every person you're talking to, the banker that you're trying to extract time and money or a loan has an agenda. You have a different one. So, you know, what you do about it, right? There is not much you can do about it other than prioritizing what's good for all parties involved. And
Right.
another, foreign concept to me is the fact of, uh, and you heard this, multiple times. It's a win-win situation. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is a win-win situation for all of us. I think this is a wrong concept itself because out of a negotiation, out of a business between two people, you can have an outcome where both parties benefit, but one of the parties will always benefit a bit more, and you
Mm-hmm.
should be okay with that. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and what kills a lot of negotiations, what kills a lot of good deals and a lot of good relationship is when you find out that the other person got a bit more than you out of this. And then you think, why? You start to get, kind of crazy, jealous, this, that, envy. But that's nature. This time, maybe, he had the upper hand. So you had a win, he had a win, maybe slightly better than yours.
Yes.
But next time you engage, you might have a lever. So this is how life works, how a business basically goes. And you should, you should basically self-analyze
Right.
because again, great business relationship, great negotiations come from great collaboration. You should.
Beautiful. I think that's a beautiful thing to end on. And what I want to say for everybody that's listening is I want to point out how much self-work you have done and that I'm sure that you continue to do. Because I have a little saying that, if you want to change, your organization, you want to change your family situation, you want to change the world, it starts by changing yourself. And everything kind of goes from there. How people respond to you, how you respond to others, that self-knowledge is absolutely critical. So I want to thank you again. We're going to get this out. And how can people get in touch with you, Tony?
Well, basically through my LinkedIn profile, it's open. People can see what I'm, what I'm doing, what I'm yapping about. Uh, And yeah, so if anybody is interested in acquisition, roll-up strategies, and everything that is concerned that side of the world, I'm happy to help, give them advice and go where most people wouldn't go. Because again, I've learned some very, very big lesson the hard way, which cost me a lot of money. But I'm happy to give back to people who want to learn from somebody that been there and done that, which is
Beautiful.
um,
That's a very generous offer. So thank you so much again. Don't go anywhere, and we're just going to stop the live recording. Okay?
sure, sure.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Oh yeah, it
What do you
was
think?
absolutely. No, it was absolutely. You touched on some, some things that have been neglected for a long period of time. I keep talking to people that are 30, 40, 50 years older than me in business, and they say, "Oh, Tony, you have no idea. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was so much better doing deals. We had no computer, we had nothing. It
Right,
was
right,
just a
right,
handshake. It was just a handshake, trusting your gut, and that's it.
right.
So
So let me ask you a question. Since you said, and you and I talked, and you had asked me, what's in it for me, right? You asked me that straight out, which is great. Is there any way that you see that I might support what you're doing? Because you're a deep thinker, and I know that.
indeed, I was always interested in self hypnosis and those type of
Hmm.
those kind of stuff because I think I still have some, baggage, I would say, from the past that I need to,
Hmm.
fully release. But I'm selling myself the story that I don't have time and I'm busy and I need to push deal forwards, which it actually is. By the way, I'm not, saying that as a
Yeah, it's
joke.
all true, right?
Yeah, it's all true. I need to, we need to push the deal forward until the end of April. Everything is so chaotic, which is great. That's what I thrive, and
Hmm.
everything is chaotic.
Hmm.
I feel comfortable. So,
Right.
but if we could, explore, ways of, collaborating on that, on imprinting perhaps new, because again, it's the subconscious part of my mind is something that I want to, guard with my life. It's necessary, and I want to
Absolutely.
implement, best practices that will bring you further in life. And as you said, I never consulted with any, professional.
Hmm.
All the work was truly done by myself, hitting my head to the wall. Okay, now you got to change this, write things down, think differently, and then actually learning by doing. So I heard a lot of positive experiences from people doing self-hypnosis. Is something that I always wanted to try, and perhaps get going, but never had the opportunity to. Didn't want to sit, put myself in kind of a vulnerable spot. Find, try to find people who are experiencing that, and
Yeah,
but I believe. Uh, I believe this is one of the things that I will truly like to, in a sense, entertain.
okay.
And I'm sure you kind of have experience with
I think so.
what I just said. So,
Just a little. Just it's not only the experience, and we can make another time, Tony, and have a really good conversation about it. But it's my, as I said, it's my passion. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still looking for ways to expand, um, and I'll just leave you with this. And you can listen. I did a TEDx talk 2 years ago. It was called "Befriend Your Inner Enemy," but it was really my process as a clinician. Kind of how I came to this mind body stuff, and you're only working with half a deck, and when you're just thinking. But my whole career has really been about how do I get under the conscious mind, because that drives everything. So all the training that I've taken, all the years, really, literally 40 some years. And as I said, I'm still learning. I got a new book, a new 700-page book that I'm, you know, just kind of working on. So as far as you want to go, I can teach you, honestly, because I'm really a teacher at heart. And you got a great start. You just have a really, really great start. So I do know the how-tos, so that you don't have to waste a lot of time, really.
Mhm.
It's really neuroplasticity and all that kind of stuff. Years ago when I first started, it was all, magic. Now there's science really kind of is behind it, and there's so much to grow and learn and have fun with.
Yeah, you touched on something that's very important for me. What works, right? Effectiveness. I'm not interested in theory or what might work. I'm interested in what works. If you have something that might work well for me, that I can reap great rewards in business, let's talk. And I've been, in a sense, also a bit vulnerable, I would say, by sharing some of the things a bit about my past, which I usually don't do.
Mhm.
Because again, I come from an absolute, point of view where I don't like to share vulnerabilities. I don't like to share doubts,
I know,
especially in business. Because
I know.
and again, this is my opinion. One of the worst thing that newbies or soon to be entrepreneurs do is share doubts with their team, with their spouse, with I mean everybody's looking for, in my surrounding, everybody's looking for guidance. They
That's
see
right.
me as
That's
this
right.
as this
You're a winner. You're a
unshakable. Yeah,
winner. That's it. That's
exactly.
right. I
Exactly.
get it.
So I'm gonna, I need to have always the right answers, the right thing to do. Everything
Yeah.
is taken care of. Blah blah blah.
Mm.
So I'm coming from an environment where I don't need to share doubts. I don't need to share what's inside me, and I learned to push that deep down and not think about it. But again, uh,
You need some place, Tony.
mhm,
Again, I'll give you this a little analogy that I always use about leadership. You have about as much room as a crease on a pair of pants, because everybody wants a leader, and everybody wants to kill the leader off. Right? So it is a very fine line, in terms of what it looks like, what you show, what you share, how you share. I have the same experience, really, kind of as a therapist, as a clinician. I was taught in my early years, you don't share anything. You're like a white sheet of paper, you know. And then I was like a robot, you know, but that's not me. So there's so much that you talk about that I know that I can support you, and just give you a couple things this way, that way, how to do that, just some new, I guess probably the best way to say it is some new guidelines for yourself that will work,
okay,
that will work.
okay.
It's not an always,
And
never. Yeah.
And
So,
let me ask you this, from a professional standpoint, and
yes.
from all the years of
Yeah.
experience that you have, do you think that self hypnosis is something that can be accomplished? Is something that it's
Well,
true?
when you use the word self-hypnosis, I'm not exactly sure I mean, what you mean. Okay. So what's the goal that you want to reach? And then we can just make some other time, but what's the goal that you want to reach when you use the word self-hypnosis? I
When
want to
I say
be,
yes, when I use self hypnosis, I mean, installing new
oh,
subconscious
absolutely.
patterns of
Absolutely.
behavior and patterns of thinking, right?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Really?
Without a doubt.
Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting.
Without a doubt. The way that I am today, trust me, in terms of how calm I am in general, how I can function, how I can think at the same time, be totally aware of what's happening internally, making decisions, knowing when not to make a decision, whole bunches of things. You absolutely, without a doubt, can train your unconscious. You can.
Okay.
All right. You can. I mean,
And
and I
and,
and
and you have patterns here that are truly working for
absolutely, I
that you follow.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well,
It
that's
it
that's that's more interesting to me.
yeah. No, it is. It's learning how to retrain the unconscious mind. I mean, that's exactly when you're using self hypnosis. I think that's what you're talking about.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, yeah, it's my whole
Interesting.
profession.
Okay, and it's not all that kind of, deep meditation, yoga type of, status that you need to reach. It's different than that, right?
It is whatever works for you. However, can get into your unconscious mind that will accept new information and then work with it. Okay, so it's like you're an athlete. You're training. You
Hmm.
know, our knee jerk reaction is go to. There was I was telling I'm working with a 14-year-old golfer, young kid,
Okay.
who wants to be number one golfer in the world.
Wow.
Okay, okay, that's what you want to do. Let's build the building blocks that you have to do it. But we watch a lot of tennis, and my husband teaches tennis, and I created a program called. It started out as called Tennis to the Max, where I was teaching the mental side of tennis, and my husband was teaching the on court side. And then people started asking me if I could do it in business instead of just sport. And so moved it over. It's now mastery under pressure. Same thing. How do I have a quiet body and a clear mind under a lot of pressure? And
Hmm.
that's kind of really what we're doing. So anyway, I was watching one of the tennis matches, and they were talking about one of the tennis players who would get her right foot going before her left foot. I mean, I don't really remember the detail, but the training that it took to retrain her to get that right foot going faster than you know, I mean,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, this is my whole world, Tony.
Okay. Well, I'm intrigued.
Okay. Okay. So
I'm
let's make
I'm
a time.
intrigued.
Pull out your calendar. I know you're busy. I'm busy. We're busy, but we'll find a time. And I could probably say, without a doubt, it'd be the best investment of your life. Truly.
Well, okay. Well,
And I say
thinking
that,
about it.
well, again, I'm just saying it. You do the work, I can be the guide. Okay. That's the way it goes. You know, um, and the work is in between sessions. It's not I don't give it up, it's practice and repetition and practice and repetition so that you are actually building new neural pathways.
Okay.
Okay. All right. What's good for you? Give me some times and I'll,
Well, as I mentioned, we're getting this deal across the
whatever
finish
works.
line. Can we do first week of April,
Sure. Sure, sure, sure.
like
Um,
Tuesday,
Go
Tuesday, 1st
Tuesday.
of April,
I can do, where are you located? Where are you?
Central?
Central. Okay, so I can do 10 o'clock my time, noon your time, or I can do 2 o'clock my time, 4 o'clock your.
Yeah, 4 o'clock my time works.
Let me just make sure my appointment's at 3. No, I can't, actually can't. I can do it a little bit later. I could do it at 4:30 my time, 6:30 your time.
6:30 my time.
Okay, you got it. 4:30. Okay, I'm going to send you an invitation, Tony.
Hmm.
I'm excited.
Well, yeah, let's see.
Again, you could go look at my TEDx talk.
Hmm.
It'll give you a little clue. Um, again, I did it a couple years ago, but I have a just kind of kind of what I do.
No,
Okay.
I had a look at it. Um, I watched it, and I watched a couple of other interviews that she did with people under the same
Okay.
circumstances. So I'm kind of aware with what you do, but skepticism is right.
Of
the
course.
problem, right? You know
Of
what I mean?
course. Of course. Absolutely. And you have every right to be skeptical, you know?
Yeah. And not because of you directly or because
No,
of
no,
the work
no.
you do. It's just how my mind functions.
No,
Perhaps
no,
this
no.
is also.
No, no, no. It's good. It is what it is. This is where you're at. So I have a little saying, Tony, if people couldn't change, I'd be out of a job.
Oh,
That
so people can change. Okay, that's
people
good.
can change. Yeah. I mean, again, remember what I said. People are simple and also very complicated. There are certain, just like business, there are certain axioms in business that if you follow these axioms, things will most likely work, right? And then there's like just what you said, it's the people, the people can put the little quirks in it and a million different variations,
Yeah.
right? It's the same thing.
Well, Tina, I'm excited to talk more regarding
Okay.
what's wrong with me.
There's nothing wrong with you. Okay. We're going to get that
Come
really
on.
clear.
I'm joking. Come on, I'm joking, but I think in order for
Good.
you to understand the whole pattern and how I work, I don't know what kind of work and what work you will give me to do. I learned the hard way, so you better be prepared for that. Whatever you're gonna, give it to me, it's gonna be, something very harsh to digest, where I need really to break my brain until I can
I
digest
love
it.
a challenge. Life could be very boring without challenges.
Let's see. I can be your biggest testimony, or I can be your worst one. So let's see.
All right, sweetie. I'll see you next week. Have a great week. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate
Likewise.
it.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
We'll
Bye
talk.
bye.
Okay. Bye now. Bye.